Hi folks, welcome back. And as always, thanks so much for joining. Now today we're going to make milk paint, and we're sort of in the middle of a series on making art supplies from sustainable materials that can be used on canvas, typical painting applications. And today is another installment of that. So today what we're going to do is we're going to mix up some casein, separate it with the vinegar. We're going to pop in some hydrated lime. We're going to mix that up, and we're going to explore how this paint appears in several phases, from very thin to a nice thick paste, and we're going to look closely at the finished product. All right, so let's get started. A traditional milk formula that dries flat. You can make it as thick or as thin as you like, and easily store for over a week. All right, so let's go around the table and see everything that we're going to need to make milk paint the traditional way. Obviously, we're going to need casein or milk. In my case, I'm going to use casein powder and water. I'm going to add some vinegar, just the right amount, so that we can precipitate the casein protein from the whey. I have a grinder here if I need it. I have some measuring cups. This will be for the casein. This will be for the hydrated lime. And because it's a bit chunky sometimes, I have a strainer here. I've picked a couple of colors here. They're just mica powder soap dyes. This one is carmine. This one is bright red. And I used 2 paddles of each to make this color right here. And we're going to try to approximate that today. All right, so as we've done a few times before, I'm going to use the casein powder instead of fat-free milk. I'm going to put the powder in water, mix it up, and I'm going to refine the casein protein the same way as we do in fat-free milk by using vinegar. We're going to precipitate the casein out, we're going to rinse it, and we're going to prepare it to become incorporated with hydrated lime. So let's get started with this. So what we're going to do is we're going to roughly measure out a half a cup of the casein powder into the bowl here. And I use this as a reference, but I have a quarter cup already in the bag that I'm going to use. We're just going to drop 2 of those in here. I like going into all of my chemicals with either glass or stainless steel if possible. So just to give you an eyeball of what we put in there. Now, I'm going to toss in some water here, and we're going to start giving this a stir. Now, these are rough measurements. I'm just doing these just to get you in the ballpark. Should you choose to begin making your own milk paint formulas, this is a starting point for you. You will need to measure your own things. So, once I've got this mixed up, we'll be back so that we can extract the casein protein from the powder. After mixing a bit, I've popped this into the microwave. I've brought this up to roughly 50°C, and that's because the reaction occurs more easily and faster if you heat the water a good bit. And of course, again, there's no real measurement on the vinegar as well. Just pour a bit in at a time, and Once you see that you're getting chunks like this, then you know you're at the proper amount, and we want to just let this sit for a bit and denature as much as possible. Okay. Okay, so I have dumped the whole thing into a strainer, let the water run out to recover the curds, and I have washed my curds in cold water to remove any of the remaining vinegar so that I have nice little clumps. Now what we're going to do is we're going to head and set this aside while we prepare the lime, and we're going to mix the lime together, and we're going to add the casein to that. So what I have here is roughly a quarter cup or 60 milliliters of hydrated lime, and it's clumpy, so you may want to run it through the strainer first. Alright, so we've pushed all of the hydrated lime through this screen, and it's going to mix much better. And what we're going to add to that is 250 milliliters of water. And we're going to let this stir until it is just a thin liquid with no bumps and lumps in sight. And we'll be back. And after a couple of hours of mixing, we now have a paint base. Now, this will stir in this form for a couple of days just fine. And you can keep a paint base mixing most of the time, just like this. And then as you need color, of course, add it as it's needed. Now, for me, I always strain it before I add any pigments. My thoughts are that why waste pigment coloring things that will get strained out? So, and this is a couple of folds of cheesecloth that I'm running it through, and that should be just fine, just like that. Now we know we're strained, and at this point we can begin adding our colors. And mixing colors becomes very easy at this point. Now here is what's left over from what I painted in preparing for this. And if you have any left over as well, just a couple of drops of thymol. Shake it in a bit, and this should store easily in the refrigerator for a week, perhaps a little more. Okay, now the base is still very thin right now. As it sets still, it will begin to gel. For what we're going to do, and you can measure this, but I'm not for the purposes of this video. If you want exact measurements, you go right ahead, and that will allow you to reproduce your colors much more easily. To make the salmon colored paint that I showed you in the beginning, what I did was simply took a little carmine and bright red, of a company's mica powder soap dye. Now these are probably pretty much all the same. So who makes this is really not important. And just take a little knob, just like that. That was the carmine. And that's a lot. And this is the bright red. All right. And just stir it in. You can strain this once again if you like. But what I would do would simply just cap this off and let it sit and come back in a little while and perhaps stir it a bit more. And I typically don't use my milk paint for 24 hours, so you can just give it a little shake. And by special request, we're going to do some green. I'm going to make the same assumptions here. Now I'm using mica powder. However, yes, you can use mineral pigments. You can use fruit juice, vegetable juice, anything with color that will mix with water, you'll have it. So let's mix this up a little bit. And we'll cap this off. And we'll continue to shake this from time to time and let it firm up. Okay, so after a few shakes, I'm mixed up. It's a very thin paint right now. It would almost be like a wash. But after a week, it begins to firm up, and this can be mixed up again. To smooth it out, and we're ready to go. Now, the reason I point this out is I'm going to explain that in just a moment. All right, so there we have it, a traditional milk paint suitable for any surface. Now, if you plan on using this outside or in a wet environment, well, you'll need to seal it. Now, I want to direct you to here. This is the stuff that we made today, very thin, very watery, more like a wash at this point. But when you let it sit, it thickens up. And after a week, it's very nice. It's a nice thick gel. Now, I bring this up because of what we're going to be doing next week with what we've made today. So you make this and you tuck it away. Refrigerator's fine. Until next week, where we're going to explore a couple fun things like crackle paint using milk paint. And I'm going to give a shot at puffy paint made with milk. So take a look at the little green ball, click that. That's my channel. From there you can subscribe if you like. And look here for last week's video on making gesso, which is, of course, the base from which we do all of our paintings from. Thanks again for watching. Bye-bye now.